Welcome to the very first episode of the Engaged by Design podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Cottam.
And I'm Dr. Vernon Smith. We're the co-founders of Engaged by Design, the leadership coaching and consulting firm, and we're co-hosts of the Engaged by Design podcast. And we're really glad you joined us today. This is the beginning of something we've wanted to share with you for a long time.
Yeah, this podcast is literally years in the making, and I'm really excited to get started. So today's episode is about introductions, who we are, what the podcast is, how it will bring you value, and why it matters right now in higher education leadership. But more than that, this podcast is an invitation. We're inviting you to join a conversation that we think is long overdue.
Yeah, welcome to the conversation. Michael, before we start, let's have a little fun introducing ourselves. Here we go. I loaded up a ChatGPT description of you.
Oh, no.
And it got the intro wrong, so wrong, on many levels. But after a number of rounds and prompts, this is the result. So here is AI Sarah to introduce you.
I am proud to introduce Dr. Michael Cottam, an innovative leader who served as faculty, dean, and associate provost, leading agile change across community colleges, private universities, and online institutions. Michael is known for his creativity, strengths-based leadership skills, and also a relentless drive to help teams succeed. He's a founding partner in Engaged by Design. Welcome, Michael.
She sounds very convincing. Not bad. Not real, but not bad.
I don't know. I think it's pretty amazing, to be honest. It's a little disturbing, but man, it's amazing what this stuff can do. So watch out, Vernon. I did the same thing for you. Here is your ChatGPT generated bio in the voice of your favorite Imogen, the posh British announcer. Here you go.
Today, I am honoured to introduce Dr. Vernon Smith, a nationally recognised leader who served as faculty, dean, vice president, chief academic officer, and provost across community colleges and private universities. Vernon is known for his strategic leadership, innovation in digital learning, and passion for building learner-centered partnerships. He's a founding partner at Engaged by Design. Welcome, Vernon.
That's very uncanny valley. Actually, that's quite amazing, the combination of the two.
Yeah, well, now that we know who we are, at least according to the AI Underlord's definition, it's time to start this conversation in our first episode.
And we want you to know that we're starting this conversation and podcast not because we have all the answers, but because we have a lot of experience finding the answers to some of the most difficult and complex questions in higher education.
Yeah, we're starting this podcast because we've lived in the tension of leadership, in the faculty meetings, budget planning sessions, in those strategic retreats where everything gets really tense. Maybe there's declines in enrollment. I think we've all experienced some of that. And we're trying to create new modalities and new learning experiences. In all of that, there's an extreme tension in our leadership.
We've seen and we know how hard it is to innovate in systems that weren't designed for speed or change. Michael, since the Middle Ages, so going back 1,500 years, más o menos, more or less, only 3 institutions have survived.
Oh, wait, let me play some music to set the mood here. Oh, now doesn't it feel like you're stepped into the Wayback Machine? Here we go.
That's perfect, Michael. It is really perfect. Think about this. The 3 institutions that have survived, almost unchanged since the Middle Ages, are the military, the church, and academia, universities and colleges. Up till a few years ago, you could have gone back in time and understood your role, understood what you needed to do. But returning to the present day, all of these institutions are experiencing rapid change, both evolution and revolution, I would say.
And let's be honest, higher education is in a VUCA environment right now. VUCA is a term from the U.S. Army, yes, military, War College, that came up in the 1990s as the world was changing after the end of the Cold War. Now, VUCA is an acronym. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And if you've been leading in higher ed for the last few years, that acronym probably hits pretty close to home.
Absolutely. Let's look at the environment we're all operating in right now, today. Institutions are being asked to do more with less. Just look at state budgets around this. Expectations on higher ed are more prescriptive and politicized. Just read the newspaper if you want to. Actually, don't read the newspaper. No one reads the newspaper anymore. Go online and read it. Public trust is fragile. Students, parents, and policymakers are questioning the return on investment of their degrees. Is a college degree worth it? Is still a question that's hanging out there. Faculty are working harder than ever, burning out in many cases, stressed, and undergoing the unbundling of their profession right now. And why? Because technologies, including artificial intelligence, are knocking over the game board faster than we can get the pieces back in place. Any leadership turnover at your organization is happening at every level.
Right. The pressures from inside and outside of the institution are unprecedented. There's so much uncertainty. We're in a VUCA environment. But even in the good times, I've seen great ideas, great innovations just die in committee. But it's not because the people are not smart or committed to change. It's because the systems that we built, the systems that have been established since medieval times for the old stable world of education, they didn't support action, not in today's environment. Maybe the priorities shifting in Washington policy or shifts in student interest or even demographic changes, or maybe the leader trying to drive change left the organization. Does any of that sound familiar to you, Vernon?
Oh, yeah, very much so. We can't use medieval solutions or the 2010 solutions, for that matter, to face our 2025 challenges and beyond. And that's why we started Engage by Design. We wanted to create a space, a structure, to help leaders actually build momentum, not just talk about transformation, but to actually live it and have the tools to transform in their tool set. We believe engagement can be designed.
And that's what the name means, right? Engagement isn't just about good intentions or charismatic leadership. It's really about intentionality. It's about design. It's about building systems, processes, teams, and a culture that aligns the people on our teams to the purpose we're trying to achieve. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot in this show. How do we get people engaged by design? It's in the name.
Right. So we're going to share and reflect upon what real innovation looks like, if that's all right. It's not the buzzwordy new shiny object, but the real stuff, the kind that improves student outcomes. It's going to help you clarify the faculty's transforming role, reimagine curriculum that's being pushed by technology, and the assessment of learning, which is really key in that. Verifying the mastery of competencies, reducing cost, increasing quality, and reaching people who you've never reached before.
And that brings us to the framework that underpins a lot of our thinking. It's what will bring you, immediate value by listening to the podcast. And we call it macro leadership. Yes, macro is an acronym.
We know we love acronyms in higher education, just like the military. I love acronyms because they help me remember complex concepts and peg them to my long-term memory. So, Michael, what does macro, M-A-C-R-O, stand for?
It comes from the book I wrote over the past couple of years, and I just published it in 2025. It's based on over 20 years of experience and dozens of projects that either succeeded or maybe they taught me a lesson about how I could lead a little bit better. So macro, as we said, stands for match, assign, coach, reflect, and ovation. And over the next several episodes of the podcast, we're going to dig into each of those in detail.
And Michael, I've been with you in some of those big projects over the years. Some of those, I was the person that assigned you to them. But let's focus on macro. Can you go through those steps one by one, at least at a high level?
Sure. I'll give a brief description of each one, and then we can dig in deeper as we go. So remember, macro is MACRO, and the first one is match. Match is about getting the right people in the right places on your team, especially when you're working on innovation or you're in high-pressure change initiatives. It's about matching your people individually, right? Their talents, their strengths, their skills, their preferences to the role that they're best suited to play. That's match. It's the important first step. Then we have A for assign. It's about giving each person on your team very clear expectations for what needs to be done, what level of autonomy they have, what timelines are expected, and how you as a leader will follow up with them over time. So clear assignment is the A. C is for coach, and coach is the ongoing process of developing your people, their talents, their strengths, their skills. Coaching is a structured, purposeful set of conversations that we have that are about their assigned projects or their assigned tasks. And it helps them to improve their individual performance. So that's coach. The R in macro is reflect. The reflect step is how we set aside time to discover what we're doing well and what we can change. Not only after the end of a project, which is sometimes too late, but reflecting in the middle of the action. That's when we can actually change course. So R is for reflect. Then the last one, O, is for ovation. And ovation is the celebration step in the framework. So we celebrate progress along the way, and we build a culture and a habit of gratitude, and we put it into place in informal and formal ways. So when you put it all together, the macro leadership framework helps you to lead more strategically, and it helps you to develop your people along the way, even while you're working on these huge changes at your institution.
So, Michael, I think that's the key. It's not just a project, it's the huge changes. It's the culture. It could be committees. It could be processes that you're really trying to look at it and reimagine. I also reflect on this, Michael, that some of this sounds pretty commonsensical, but it's not that easy, right? If it was common sense, people would do it and they would do it well, but we know that's not the case. So I'm also thinking, Michael, it's macro, not micro.
Right. It's not micro. In fact, one of my early titles of the book was the anti-micromanagement book. So macro leadership is the antidote to micromanagement and disengagement. These are two of the most vexing problems today at either end of a spectrum, being completely disengaged or being overly detail focused in your management style. So the macro framework isn't just a set of specific little steps that you have to do. It's not just an acronym that is kind of clever in my opinion, but each word in the macro framework is a lever for change. And they work, especially for those leading from the middle of the organization.
Let's talk about that for a minute, Michael. Let's talk about what it means to be in the middle in higher ed, because we often think leadership is top down, the president, the provost. But in our higher education hierarchies, even those leaders are not at the top of the heap. There are boards of trustees, legislators, governors. You never know. But if you've been a dean, assistant dean, a director, or a department chair, you know that the sausage is made in the middle. The core processes of teaching and learning for student success happen in the middle. You need the middle.
Exactly. The middle leaders are the bridge. When you're in the middle, you're translating strategy, no matter where it comes from, no matter which governing body it comes from, you're translating that strategy into action that impacts students. You're often negotiating across silos. You're trying to build trust, often without even having any authority, at least no formal authority. And that can be exhausting. Being in the middle is pretty exhausting. But it's also where the most important innovation can happen. The middle is the mess, but it's also where we begin to move from high-level strategy to execution that impacts teaching and learning.
So let's go back to macro, the first part, match. It's all about getting the right people on the right projects. That might sound simple, but it's not, Michael, because you already have a team in place or have had an existing team in place. So to match well, you have to understand their strengths, not just their job titles and their credentials, but how they think, how they build trust, and how they take action. It's, if I understand correctly, it's not about what their official role is, it's about what they can really do.
Right. It's about what their contribution can be in a given situation, project, change initiative. That's why I became a certified Gallup strengths coach. I'd been using Clifton Strengths for a couple of decades, but I've seen how people's talents, what they naturally bring to the table, I've seen how when it's understood well and aligned, it can unlock productivity and motivation and overall morale in very powerful ways. If someone is a really strategic thinker, no matter what their title is, don't just put them on implementation. Or if someone thrives on building relationships, don't isolate them behind the scenes doing a spreadsheet. You need to match people to what they're best at.
I agree, Michael, and I agree with you about the Clifton Strengths as a really helpful tool for getting beyond roles and titles and getting to real strengths and what your real assets are in your team, you know. So the second principle, assign, is about clarity. And I'm a big proponent that you have to communicate things crystal clear. So because many projects fail because people aren't really sure what they're responsible for. Who decides? What's the timeline? What's the scope? What authority do I have to move things forward?
And we've seen that play out across multiple institutions. I once started working on a strategic planning team where 6 people think they're the lead, right? You can imagine how well that goes when you don't have clarity of roles or who's supposed to do what. But if you can get really clear with your assignments as a leader, including how much autonomy people have to act, things start to move faster. The drama decreases. If it doesn't stop completely, it at least decreases. And the outcomes and the speed improves. Assigning properly is about speed and it's about trust.
Yeah, I love the clarity of that. So we've assigned it. Now we're going to move into coaching. And this one's the game changer because coaching isn't about telling people what to do. That's the fallback for a lot of management and leadership. It's different. It's about helping them to grow, helping them to figure out how to succeed on their own terms, with their own meaning, with support, feedback, and trust that's given to them.
Absolutely. And investing in your coaching skills as a leader is another way to build, capability, speed, and trust. I keep saying that. But one of my favorite leadership memories was I was on a team with a colleague who was really struggling early on in a project. She didn't maybe have the context or the motivation or the skills to do what was asked of her, or maybe she misunderstood them. But when I started working with her, instead of stepping in and just fixing things like sometimes we're tempted to do, I started asking questions, and coaching is about asking good questions. I asked her what she needed, what was her understanding, what were the blocks, what was in her way, how could I help? What did she want to learn to be able to succeed in this role? And we mapped out a path together. That may sound like it's slow, like when you give somebody an assignment, they should just do it. It's not. It's fast, because when you coach somebody to do the work and you map it out together, over time, they build their capability. And in this case, it took a couple of months, but she started to just crush it on that project. And the next project we were working on, she could just step in and do it. So coaching is an investment in your people so that as you move forward, they accomplish more and accomplish it more quickly with a higher level of skill.
Yeah, that's what coaching does. I think we need to think about it more as not just capacity building, but also true empowerment, right? You're empowering them, you're increasing their skill set, but you're also moving away the obstacles in the processes and in the organization, the barriers that keep them from, and the organization from moving forward and being more effective. So, Michael, then that will lead us to reflect. We don't learn if we don't reflect back, if we don't look back. But this is not just nostalgia. This is a type of reflection that has to be structured. You need the right questions, the right environment. Otherwise, it becomes Thanksgiving dinner with the siblings going back and forth with each other, right? It becomes a blame session or a vague debrief.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a future episode about specific tools. But one of the simplest tools, I'll just give it to you right now, is maybe a plus delta board. And that's just having the group identify what worked, which is a plus, right? What went well in this particular situation. And then the delta is what would you change? So having a simple board where you identify what worked and what you might like to change keeps people constructive and focused on looking back at what worked and looking forward to what you want to do next. It's focused on process and progress, not on personality flaws.
That makes sense, Michael. Yeah, it's always about the process. First, you go to the process, not the people. Had great mentors teach me that over time. And last, Michael, the O, ovation. That's your celebration and recognition. That's often very overlooked by leadership. People get busy, they don't stop. First of all, they don't reflect, and then they don't celebrate. It's not because we don't care. It's, there's this thing about forgetting or getting on to the next thing. We get busy, we move on. The problem is people need to be seen. They need to know that their work matters. I think you're the one that shared with me, Michael, that if a person has been told thank you by their supervisor within the last 7 days, that it's much more likely that they will be engaged in their workplace.
Yeah, that's true. It's actually from some Gallup research that less than a third, I can't remember the exact number, we'll put it in a later episode, less than a third, maybe even less than a quarter, 1 out of 4 people, according to their research worldwide, has received any kind of recognition, thanks, or praise in the past week. And that's pretty sad, but it's the reality. So I built Ovation into this framework to remind us that we need to think as leaders about, along the way, recognizing people, creating a culture of gratitude and recognition, informal and formal. During a really busy season a few years ago, I just started writing handwritten thank you notes on Fridays. It wasn't really fancy. These were, basically pretty blue cards. I'd write 2 or 3 sentences on them, and then I'd mail them to people. But when's the last time you received something in the mail that was actually positive, that built you up? The response to me taking a few minutes each week was just overwhelming. People kept those notes. They put them on their desk right in front of them. And months later, someone would bring up in a big meeting how grateful they were and how amazing it was to receive a handwritten note from their supervisor, or in many cases, just from somebody else in the institution. That connection between people builds a culture that speeds things up, builds trust, and helps you get through so many of the barriers that happen in this VUCA culture we're in.
Absolutely, Michael. It's moving from just tasks, getting the task done, to building stronger relationships. And that's what actually moves organizations. And culture's what carries and will carry us through these VUCA storms that we're all experiencing. And that's the point of this podcast. Leadership isn't strategy. It's about relationships. It's about designing the systems you want to have intentionally. It's about habits. And frankly, Michael, I think in these days, it's about hope.
That's why you and I wanted to build this consultancy and coaching firm, and ultimately why this podcast exists. It exists to bring you stories, tools, conversations that help you to lead better from wherever you are. That's what we're about.
And Michael, in future episodes, we'll go into depth with how listeners can benefit from and use macro leadership in their current work. So we're going to hear from academic innovators, online learning experts, thought leaders from across higher education, and frontline faculty that are dealing with these issues every day. We're also going to get tactical so you as our listener can be more strategic. We can honor the past. Michael, can we hear the past for a second so we can honor it? There we go. That's awesome. Huzzah! That's great. And we can prepare for a challenging future. Maybe some future music. And more than anything, we're going to stay honest and real with you.
And we're going to be a little bit silly. So if there's something you would like us to talk about, some story you've heard that you think would be really beneficial to others, maybe there's someone you think we should interview, we should bring in as a guest, visit engagedbydesign.com and drop us a note. We'd be happy to hear from you and turn this podcast into something that you'll enjoy.
Would really love to hear from you. And if you're one of the first 10 listeners to reach out after this episode airs, we'll send you a free copy of Michael's book. You can request a copy at engagedbydesign.com/macro leadership book. And it's also easy to find on our homepage, engagedbydesign.com.
Yeah, thank you, Vernon. I would love to give away a few more of these books to get the ideas into the world. I think it's going to make a difference in your leadership. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. This was our first episode of our first podcast, and we're really glad you're here with us on this journey. And as we wrap up, here are some questions for you to consider. Think about your own situation. What are the most VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous situations that you are facing in your institution right now? What are you doing to innovate in this VUCA environment? And how could we help you at Engaged by Design?
That's great, Michael. So for our listeners, please like, comment, send us a comment, rate, subscribe, share the episode, invite a colleague, and join us for what's ahead. We'd love to continue the conversation with you.
Because Vernon, this is how we move the world with intentionality. Engaged by Design.
So AI Sarah and AI Imaging, how'd we do?
Great job. Would you like feedback for improvement?
Brilliant. Do you need further assistance?
No way.
That's great.